Okay, Mr. Chris. Okay, hi everybody. My name's Sandy Beach and I'm an alcoholic. How you all doing tonight? I'm glad everybody came back. And if this is your first time at this session, we're just here to have some fun. And what we've been doing is spending a little bit of time up front talking about the history of AA, and then we'll get into step 6. So we've been through the steps one at a time. And where we left off, really, was as we got into the 40s, and World War II broke out, and several things happened of note during that decade. One was that they held a convention in Cleveland to celebrate 10 years, put on mostly by the people in Cleveland and Clarence. And they got almost 3,000, 2,500 or 3,000 people, which is a lot, because now you're talking about AA is only 10 years old. And that many people showed up, and some from Canada. And it was a wonderful event just to see the beginnings of what we now have at the international level with 70,000 people. And I think we mentioned before that if you're new, you want to keep track of these things. Every 5 years is the international. And so in 3 years, it'll be in San Antonio. And then 5 years after that, Atlanta. So we got 2 shots at ones that are close by for those of us on limited budgets. So if you're in the limited budget category, you might consider San Antonio or Atlanta. And they do have rooms at local universities and bus transportation, so you don't have to get the fancy hotel downtown to go to one of these. Also in the 40s, Roland Hazard passed away. And we mentioned him earlier. And what was kind of sad was that he lost 2 sons in World War II. And as did a lot of families in this country. But he was one of them. And I think I mentioned before the Grapevine was started, and by 6 people in the office who wanted to have a local newsletter that people could read, and that has developed into a major publication of AA writings and AA members sharing their thoughts on how their lives are going. The main thing that happened during those years was Bill started to work on the traditions. And this is in spite of him having terrible depressions. Not much was known about depressions, and so we had one of our people we talk about in our history, and you see photographs of Dr. Harry Tiebout, who was a psychiatrist who was a big fan of AA and tried to help out wherever he could. And Bill was seeing him to try and do something about his depression, because it went on for quite a few years off and on. And we were talking about the way the news spreads around AA, and it wasn't long before AAs around the country were spreading the rumor that he wasn't working a very good program, or he wouldn't be having depressions, and that he's been taking a few on the side, and for sure he's taking pills. And he had to endure that in silence, and just let it go. And so when you think about it, if you've heard something about anything, and it really wasn't founded, you heard Frank say it, or you heard Louise say it, you know what I'm saying, and you just repeat it. It's amazing how that just goes all the way around and can cause a lot of confusion. And so that was a perfect example right there. And I thought I'd take today since I haven't got them committed to memory, and quickly go through. I just jotted down one-word notes so I'd remember them. Those of you that are new, we have these traditions, and Bill saw the problems that were evolving once you get big. You don't have any problems that you need traditions when you're small. It's when you get big and you're starting to have conflicts within the groups, and then you're having conflicts between the groups, and then you're having conflicts between Cleveland and New York, and then between California and New York. And so Bill started looking at these, and as he traveled around the country, he would ask questions of people, and people were writing letters in to get advice about things. So out of all of this, he started writing these in the middle of having those depressions and put them together in the 40s, and they were adopted in 1950. So since we got a little bit of time here, I just want to run through them real quick and just discuss what the principles are. The first one has to do with unity, and the fact that if we as individuals don't put the well-being of AA ahead of us, there won't be any place to go. You follow what I'm saying? This is it. This is the last resort for us last gaspers. And ironically, new people seem to sense this without even being told. They kind of go, you know, I'm a wise guy everywhere else, but I think I'll behave myself here at this AA meeting. You follow what I'm saying? It's just like, because I need this. And it really is important. And then we see everybody else who used to be wise guys and jokesters and everything, and zip, when the meeting starts, people are staying focused and putting the importance of the fellowship first. And certainly no group takes more care of an individual than AA. I mean, it's not that they leave the individuals out. It's just that we have to allow, and it's very spiritual. It's one of the great spiritual things, which is to put something ahead of you. It is a great source of peace when we realize that the smaller we can make ourselves, the more happy we're going to be. The next one has to do with who's in charge. And the story they use in the 12 and 12s is, and it's typical, is if the AA's not in a certain little town somewhere, one guy or gal goes there and starts AA. That's how it gets started. You just show up in Chicago with a big book and go find a doctor and say, is there any drunks around here? You got two? Good. Tell them to come to my house on Monday nights. So now we have the My House group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Chicago officially started and totally run by the guy that starts it, because it's his house. And his particular meetings are at 7:45 because that's the earliest he can get home from work. And if you go back to places 50 years later, they're still meeting at 7:45 and wondering why. You know what I mean? I don't know, we've always done it that way. And so, but what happens is he'll get them there and he'll go, okay, we're going to read the big book together, and then we're going to do this, and this is the meeting. Okay, now we say a prayer, and that's it. We're closing up the meeting. So they tell other people, and they're getting sober. So pretty soon there's 15 people, and 2 of them have to stand in Joe's living room because that's all the room there is. And they go to Joe, why don't we move it down to, no, it's my house, it's my meeting. We're going to stay here. We don't like standing up all the time. Well, that's too bad. You want to get sober, you got to. Well, they get up to 20 people, and a small rebellion takes place, and the group announces they're moving. Much to Joe's chagrin. You ungrateful drunks, after all I've done for you, you're moving. We don't want to stand up. It can't even fit in there. And everybody smelled BO. It's terrible in there, Joe. We're going to a new place. And he has his choice now because the group just decided. You follow what I'm saying? There's no one in charge. The group just decided, and he has his choice of becoming an elder statesman or a bleeding deacon. And sometimes somebody like that will get bent out of shape and go out and get drunk. But if he's smart, he'll recognize, isn't it wonderful that these people I got sober are now taking responsibility for themselves, and they're running the meeting. I ought to go there and watch it. This is pretty exciting. This is sobriety in action. And so there we have people with long-term sobriety available at all meetings, but not running them. And they are there in case a problem arises. So 5 years later, the treasurer runs off with all the money. It shakes the group up big time, and you go to the old timer and go, what do you do? The guy ran off with the money. Oh, don't worry about it. That happens all the time. We just take up another collection, and you can be the treasurer. Okay, here we go. And we calm everybody down, and we get to move on. And so it is really spiritually guided by our loving higher power. And when we're really having a problem, we can all just sit and go, why don't we just pray for a minute and see what answer we come up with. And so that's who's in charge of Alcoholics Anonymous. Then we got the one about who can become a member. You know, every organization around the world has the membership requirements, and you got the form to fill out and all of that. And sociologists often wonder, well, how does AA function? What are its membership requirements? And of course, you've been around a while, you know the only requirement is the desire to stop drinking. So this is possibly the only organization where you decide if you're a member. The organization has nothing to say about it. How do you like that for an organization? Hello, I'm a member. Well, who invited you in? I did. And it's wide open to anybody. If you have a desire to stop drinking, you don't have to prove it. Now, let me assure you, we don't have many non-alcoholics just hanging around because it's such a cool place to be. We don't have social climbers getting it on their resume, a member of AA and all of that. But it's quite ironic that, and of course in the beginning they were very frightened that it could fall apart easily. You know, it's brand new, you don't know what you got going. And so they looked around and everybody they had there was almost dead. You follow what I'm saying? Let's say they had been around a long, long time. What we'd call low-bottom, long-term drinking drunks. And so they looked around and they kind of said to themselves, I guess this is the mold. So if somebody younger came in who still had a car, there was a great debate whether they should let him in. I mean, is this the right type of alcohol? So you can see where they were having a lot of fear about the membership in the beginning. And if you were, had problems with other substances or gambling or whatever it was, that was frightening. I don't think we better limit ourselves. And they finally, talking to Bill, and as it got around, they just would go, well, what would God do when this person showed up and said, I'm an alcoholic and I got a million other things wrong. Come on in. Wide open. If you have a desire to stop drinking and you want to be a member, you're in. So you can see how amazingly loose things are. And you wonder, where does the discipline come? Nobody's in charge. Nobody can tell anybody else to do anything. Where does the discipline come from? And well, we all know the answer. It comes from alcohol. That's where it comes from. We don't need to tell people, well, you better do this or you better do that, or something bad will happen. Something bad does happen. And so right around all the AA groups are little half pints of vodka, and they just patrol all around in the bushes out there. They're just waiting for somebody to come out and go, I'm tired of that place. I'm going to leave. And then they jump up. Hey, over here. Wow, look at that. Must be God's will. And then the vodka gets a hold of him and says, I understand you're not willing to stay in AA. No, I'm not going to stay in there. Well, we'll see about that. Watch this. Boom, boom. And then alcohol beats and beats and beats. And then you go, well, maybe I will try AA. So you can see where discipline comes from the disease itself and a sponsor like mine. But I won't even go into that because he's passed away and I have to respect him. The next one has to do with the fact that any group can run its meetings any way they want unless it affects the reputation of AA as a whole. But even if it does, nobody can do anything about it. You follow? They're going to get a letter from New York saying, we think that just reading comic books at the meeting probably won't get everybody sober. We just wanted to let you know. But the group can just continue reading comic books instead of the big book. There was a group in Richmond, Virginia that decided to serve beer at AA meetings. And that did not go down well with the groups in the area who predicted that that was wrong. It would ruin AA, and AA ought to go shut them down. So they got a letter saying, we don't think it's a good idea to serve beer. And the thinking was that back in those days, everybody drank whiskey, and beer was the free chaser. You got wine or beer or ginger ale. So they figured as long as you eliminate the whiskey, we're going to be fine. And the problem was the members forgot where the meeting was and what night of the week it met, so the idea of serving beer at meetings fell of its own weight, and it didn't need anyone helping them. But this is how groups get so different. They can be an hour and a half long. You can have a speaker, take a break, come back, discuss it, and it's just any way, it's strictly up to the group. And of course, we try not to do something that would embarrass AA. Then we come to a very important tradition called primary purpose. And I bring this up because this is the one that if you're new and we have a multitude of problems, this is the tradition that reminds us that Alcoholics Anonymous has only one primary purpose: to help the next alcoholic. End of story. It is a question of we do one thing extremely well. We can't do 10 things without diluting everything. And so many of us have other problems. You know what I'm saying? I'm a golf addict. Somebody else is a gambling addict. Somebody else is a drug addict. Somebody else is blah blah addict, an overeater addict. What is being suggested in AA is we just talk about alcohol and eliminate the others. The reason that is done is because if there's a brand new person in the back of the room and I spend 15 minutes talking about throwing up food in order to keep my weight down, he might not stay. There would not be the identification with the meeting. And the thing that holds AA together is one drunk talking to another. That's it. Everything else in AA is to support that activity of one drunk talking to another. Then we have a thing that AA shouldn't lend its name to any outside enterprise because money would get involved, prestige would get involved. Way back when one of I think it was Shenley's, wanted to have AA endorse it as a safe whiskey. And you know what I mean? And then all the drinkers in the country would go, well, that's the safest whiskey to drink because AA says it's a good whiskey or something like that. So you could see where they would like to get, and treatment centers, they will say AA approved or AA this, and that's not true. They can say they follow the AA principles, but it's not an AA-approved treatment center. And so this is the main effect of that tradition. Then we're fully self-supporting. And this is important because AA is such a popular and well-respected organization now that many times a minister might come to another AA group and say, how do I get one started in my church? I think it would help my parishioners a lot, and I really like it. And they said, well, there's some people looking for a place to meet. We'll send them by to see you. And he comes in and he's so anxious to have them come that he says, look, you can have the hall for nothing and we'll supply the coffee. Pretty tempting offer, isn't it, when you don't have any money at all? We want to turn that down. We want to establish a monthly rent. Doesn't have to be very much, but it has to be something where we're writing a check to that church, and we're buying our own coffee and our own sugar and our own coffee cups. And that gives us the arm's length distance with everyone that we operate with. That means that 3 years later, after supplying free coffee and free room for 3 years, the minister comes to the group and he's having a little hard time recruiting membership for the church. He wondered if he could make a little announcement at the meeting. It'd be kind of hard to turn him down if you've been freeloading. And you might just say, oh, okay, but make it quick, because you know you're not supposed to be doing that. And so then somebody is saying something about, well, gee, we have a wonderful church here. You go to AA here. Wouldn't you like it? And blah, blah, blah. You can see, and all of a sudden there's that, something's wrong here. Something is wrong. And that all came back to not being self-supporting, which also is a very spiritual principle, to just let's not become dependent on anyone or anything else. Then AA's non-professional. Mainly what that's talking about. We have AA people working in treatment centers. We have AA people that can take jobs as advisors, etc. But we do not carry the AA message one drunk to another for money. It's always done out of love. And that's why it works, because how many times have you had someone come over to your house to talk to you, and then when they leave, you say to yourself, what's the angle here? What's going on? Why would that guy take his whole afternoon to talk to me? There must be some money. There must be. You can hardly believe that somebody would come over and do that. And so that's the part where we always stay non-professional, in spite of Bill's idea of having paid missionaries. Then a sociologist may come and ask AA, geez, you're all over the world, you have these groups, everything is just amazing. What does AA's organization chart look like? And we refer him to our 9th tradition, which says AA as such should never be organized. So there's the secret to organization. You have no organization. What that means is there's no bottom or top. There's no hierarchy. There are just service boards. Hey, we need people to be in charge of the convention. We need people to help out, take meetings to jails. Hey, we need people to go out and talk to AA with Tampa so they can hear about it. All service work. You follow what I'm saying? Nobody in charge of anything. There are jobs to be done, and we get volunteers to do that. And there's no one in AA that can tell another AA member what to do. It doesn't exist. This is one of my favorites, that the most opinionated people in the world, and we belong to an organization which has no opinion on anything. And you got to admit, that's cool. And the reason is, all we got to do is take a position on anything. You know what I mean? Like I said, I think AA ought to endorse the Washington Redskins. I don't think that's going to go over too well in this room. It would divide us in one against the entire room. Oh, two. Thanks, Randy. Two against the entire room. And so any position and opinions on outside issues is very divisive, and it's not necessary. In spite of our desire, I mean, every so often there'll be a new way to get sober, rational recovery, and there was some psychologists back in the 60s from Canada. There's always something going on, and we'll read about it, and then you can hear the AA, well, that ain't going to work. And individually, we can do all that, but you'll never see anything coming out of GSO. Phony program started in Canada, AA says. It just isn't going to happen. And I'll tell one quick story. Boy, I'll never get through steps. Well, we'll finish it off next week. I always tell this story that when I was in Washington doing lobbying work, that's when Senator Hughes made it, the law passed, AA's a disease, and everybody started paying attention to alcoholism, and then the Health and Human Services Committee on the Senate side was having hearings on whether to put warning labels on alcohol, like on cigarettes, and they were looking for witnesses to come with expertise. And one of the staff said, well, I know who we got to get, AA. Who would know more about warning labels on bottles than AA? So they called AA and they sent a guy down. And he said, yes, what can I help you? And he said, yeah, what is your opinion on warning labels? He says, oh, we have no opinion whatsoever. And the letter's in the record. We have no opinion. And the senators, I can't believe it. They don't have any opinion. And it was just amazing. Sorry, we don't. Now, that doesn't mean that individuals, we can't have an opinion. And I have one, and I'm going to share it with you, whether you agree with it or not. I think this is one place where a warning label could do some good. And so we should have warning labels on booze. And this is what the label should say. Warning, this bottle may run out. You should consider buying two. And we may have, see, we don't have a drunk getting in his car at midnight, driving all over looking for another bottle. So it could do some good. Our last two have to do with anonymity. This is a program of attraction, not promotion, and so we maintain anonymity, just first name basis at the level of press, radio, and films. And isn't it amazing how AA grew all over the world without promoting itself? It simply did its work and allowed others to talk about it, like Jack Alexander. Allowed others to spread the good news about AA. And now, there's hardly a country that doesn't have AA. All based on attraction rather than promotion. What a novel concept. And that anonymity, the early fear was that if you were breaking your anonymity in the newspapers or television, it wasn't television, but movies or whatever, and you're kind of well known, and then you get drunk, all the drunks will go, well, I'm not going to join, look at that guy's drunk. What good is AA? And so that was the beginning of so let's keep our names quiet. As they did that, they saw a benefit that was totally unanticipated. And that was, it was of immense spiritual value to practice anonymity, to simply address yourself as Mary the alcoholic. Total identity. I am Mary the alcoholic. I'm Sandy the alcoholic. And so we took what used to be our identity, which was used to make ourselves more important, called a resume, or our line of BS. If you didn't have a resume, you had a verbal resume. You want to know who I am? And then we just had all these things that we are. And that was supposed to make us a big shot. And that was, see, it's all ego. It's all image. And we came in here and said, actually, I'm just another drunk. And we felt so free to get rid of all that identity junk and just be another drunk. And that's who we all are. You're just another drunk sitting at the meeting. Nothing special about anybody. We're just here to get sober. So anyway, that's our traditions. And now I'm going to jump into the sixth step. Now, we've been using stories to talk about these various principles, and the one we've been using is to imagine that we're projectors, and we've been looking at the screen up there, which is the world as we see it, and we see that there's all kinds of unfairness, there's injustice, there's just a lot of trouble out there as we look around. And we come in here and we find, well, the source of all that trouble that you're looking at out there is coming from your slide projector. So stop trying to go up there and move stuff around on the big screen and go inside the booth and get the slide straightened out. Because once you get straightened out inside, what appears up there is going to be quite different. And we go, really? Yeah, that's why we don't inventory them anymore. That's why we inventory me. Because we're going to fix that great big thing by fixing me. And we're going to go inside and see what's there. And so that's what we did. We went through this, and we even brought our sponsor into the booth. And we saw all of these images that we had put together, all very self-centered opinions and judgments that we put up there on a daily basis. We've been collecting them since we were little kids. And then our parents helped us collect them, and society helps us collect them. And we put all that stuff inside of us, and that's how we see what's out there. So we come to this step. Now this step becomes a monumental step. It simply says we're entirely ready to have God remove our defects of character. Sounds very innocent. Matter of fact, in the big book, it just kind of asks us if we're willing. You know, all that stuff, wouldn't you be willing? Wouldn't it be nice to get rid of? Yeah, it sure would. Good. Nice job. Nice job. And I want to just look at New York and Akron and compare them. If you remember, Bill started out telling everybody about his spiritual awakening, and it wasn't working, and Dr. Silkworth said, Bill, tell them about powerlessness. Tell them about the disease is going to kill you, and then they'll listen to you. So he got the idea of, we won't get into the God thing till later on. That was big in New York, and he also did not have the same feeling about Christianity that Dr. Bob and the rest of them did in Akron. He would meet with different priests in Fulton Sheen and studied Catholicism. He never could resolve the divinity of Jesus. He just debated that until he died. So he was like this about jumping into the God situation, although it's covered very thoroughly, but it wasn't as sudden as it was out in Akron, where on your first day you were taken up to the bedroom upstairs with three guys and go, do you believe in God? Get on your knees. Hey, we're going to pray. Nice job, son. But, I mean, you see what I'm saying? It was done. And then you were given a pamphlet on the four absolutes, which a friend of mine brought back from Akron, and they still use it. Now, the word absolute is pretty strong, isn't it? There's no slack. It's like reading Scott Peck. I never forget, I picked his book up and I went, hey, man, there's no wiggle room in here, Mr. Peck. Absolutes. Bill looked at this and he went, absolutes? Drunks won't come in. They're not going to listen to apps. Come on in here, you absolutely. So he didn't include the four absolutes as part of it. However, When asked about the four absolutes, Bill said, no, I didn't put them in because I knew it would keep away some people, but I put them in steps 6 and 7. I put them in steps 6 and 7. They're there. Now, you won't find them until he wrote the 12 and 12. I mean, you can look for them in the big book, in that prayer in the 7th step, and you could maybe read between the lines. So what it really means is shoot for perfection. But he doesn't really let the cat out of the bag until step 6 in the 12 and 12. And when you get through reading step 6 in the 12 and 12, you feel like it was written by the author of the four absolutes. Because suddenly the tone is changed from progress, not perfection, to progress towards perfection. And we suddenly are discussing perfection. And this, of course, is, whoa, geez, I didn't think we were going to go that far. I wasn't going to take it this seriously. But that's exactly what he had in mind. And so what is perfection? See, a lot of us get nervous with perfection. Nobody could become perfect. But we got to remember, we started this whole discussion backwards by going to the end of the 12th step with awakening, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So perfection has to do with awakening. It's not something that we can achieve on our own by becoming better and better and trying harder and harder. It is being in the present. The present is the deal in AA. The now is what we are trying to learn how to live in. And the now, if you want to coin a phrase, is the wormhole to awakening. That's the only place that it's going to happen, is when we're spending time in the present moment. Now, for people who sit around regretting the past and are terrified about the future, this is a foreign place to go. You follow what I'm saying? To the moment, the present moment. Perfection is the natural condition. That's our natural condition. A baby comes here, it's perfect. What ruins perfection is thinking. That ruins everything. Eden was perfect until somebody thought it wasn't fair that you couldn't eat the apple. You follow what I'm saying? It went from perfection to bad. I can't stand this place. You see what I'm saying? And that was all done by thinking. Thinking becomes, in the spiritual world, a great liability. And so I was thinking about this, and oddly enough, science and religion both deal with the past and the future. That's all they study. And science thinks they're very close to totally understanding everything. So I'm just making a story that they're going to break through. I'm going to give them a credit. I'm going to say they've, as Bill writes in the 12 and 12, man's been trying to get nature to disclose her secrets for a long time. And someday science will uncover all this and we'll live in the happiest world. So let's just, for discussion purposes, imagine that they discover everything. They finally go down and go, here it is. We got the smallest particle. We've got quantum tied in with relativity. Jackpot. There's nothing left that we don't know. Break out the champagne and we'll toast our egos. Now the question is, what are we going to do for the next 5,000 years with nothing to learn, to look forward to? You know, haven't we spent our whole life, you know, when I get promoted, you know, when I finally get married, you know, and it's always Well, with nothing left to know, the only place to go is going to be the now. That will become the place to go. What is contained in the eternal now? That is what our whole program is leading us towards, which is an awakening of the now. We get glimpses of that when we say, well, you know what happened to me yesterday? I was paying attention and then I just got lost in the moment. I was just totally transfixed by something and found myself just lost in the moment. But after a while, I got out of that and came back to the real world. Came back to the real world. Oddly enough, that was the real world, and we came back to the one with all our ideas and all our thinking. And so as we get to the sixth step and we imagine asking our higher power to come into the booth and help us get rid of all the slides that we've ever accumulated in our life. Now, have you ever gone into the attic with the intention of cleaning it out? That crap's been up there for 15 years. There isn't room for anything. I'm going up and out it goes. You remember that? And so you open the trunk. Oh man, I forgot all about that. No, I think I'll save that one. And then, well, actually, and then, so out of the whole attic, you come down with 3 envelopes and throw them out. Because it's too part of us. It's too important to us to get rid of these things. That's who I am, are all these ideas. This is the thinking I did about all these things, and that is the thinking that's driving me crazy. And so were I to, or any of us, allow this to happen, it would be perfection, as Bill said in the sixth step. Allowing all of those slides to be erased by our higher power would leave us with no opinions, no judgments, no plans for the future, no list of injustices that were done to me. I mean, the entire record about me might be gone. Where would that leave me? As they say, it would be the hole in the donut. Who would I be if all of that was gone? What would be coming out of the projector if there was just blank slides? It would be nothing but white light. That's all that would be coming out. White light. Do you know how wonderful white light is? Light's the one thing that scientists don't understand. Einstein said he'd spend the rest of his life, if he could live 50 more years, just studying light. It's often used for the Creator. Light. When people have these personality changes, we see a light about them, and they seem lighter. And if you can imagine this light coming out as we turn and look back, wherever we go during the day, this light is shining on whatever it is, causing it to be different. And the world that we live in is transformed. And we haven't done anything except get everything out of the way. This is a very tedious lecture, I know, about trying to say there's nothing to do except get rid of things. There's nothing in the program to do except get rid of. In other words, letting go and getting rid of. We got 2 inventory steps. When we get to 10, it's going to be, what else am I wrong about? What else am I wrong about I can get rid of? Gone, gone, gone. So that's just a brief description of what the dynamics, as I see them, of the sixth step are to enable light to flow through us. Now, it doesn't look like that, but it is. That's the point of the whole deal, is to get ourselves out of the way. Now, what are slides made out of? How do you make a slide? Thinking. That's the entire process for creating a slide. Thinking is our nemesis. And our sponsors, I'll give you an example. Our sponsors will get us and they'll show, look, Paul, this is the 4th time in a row you thought it through and come up with a stupid answer. You have faulty thinking. Faulty thinking. Your character defects get up there, it's faulty thinking. You understand? Yeah, I guess I do. But what are you going to do about it? I don't know. I guess I'll have to think about it. You see how that works? In other words, there's nothing that isn't solved by thinking. Now, thinking on the spiritual world is the gasoline that we pour on a smoking ember that would have gone out by itself shortly. That's what we do to a problem. Well, there seems to be a little problem over here. Let me think about that for a minute. Actually, it's not a little problem. It's quite a large problem now that I look at it. And if I were to look at it, maybe in conjunction with a friend of mine, it might turn into reason for a possible assassination. That's how big this problem is. How did it get so big? Well, I just thought about it all night. Just thought about it all night. And the more I thought, the more I thought. So thinking is a very interesting word. And I remember a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. It really caught on. Positive thinking. There's all kinds of positive thinking. But what the positive thinking is doing is changing the stuff on the screen. And it can do it. You can brighten up little portions of it. But there's something much more powerful than positive thinking. It's called not thinking. It's so far above positive thinking that you can't believe it. And that's why we eventually get to meditation. And that's what letting go is. You don't take something in your hands. You go, wow, here's a terrible situation over here. I know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to think about it. That is letting it go so that it can unfold naturally. It can unfold naturally. Things are resolving themselves as we sit in here. Remember I think last week, we're afraid to leave our problems unattended. They might get away. And then you'd have nothing bothering you. Do you see how silly we are about problems and creating them? It's the only thing that gives us some sort of an identity. And that's why anonymity was so powerful in coming in and stripping away your identity and reducing it down to, I'm just another drunk like all the other people in here. And so, if we get back to a line that we talked about 3 weeks ago, God is everything or He's nothing, and we think about it, God is everything. Everything there is God. Then what we would add to that, and this is where we have all lived and all our lives, God is everything. Everything there is God. Period. Everything else was made up by mankind. You follow what I'm saying? In other words, somehow we have a whole bunch of things that exist in addition to our higher power. In other words, in addition to everything. And I first realized that when I was trying to see where I fit into God. God is everything. And Chuck Chamberlain did that in his book. He has everything, and then he was over here. And somehow I exist in addition to everything. And anybody who's in here knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's everything, but there's also me. There's me and all my problems and all the stuff that's going on, which is going on the screen. And so I know this is not a routine talk, but I'm trying to get at what Bill was talking about when he took it up to perfection. When he, it isn't just progress. It is progress towards perfection. It is progress towards awakening. And if we are at a certain level in this search and settle for just staying there because it's pretty good, we're really missing out on something that he made very clear, and this step is available. I'm sorry it was such a heavy-duty talk tonight, and I promise next week with a slideshow and everything will be funny, and it'll be a lot more fun. We're at the end of the time. Thanks for your attention, and we'll wrap it up with the Lord's Prayer.